I learned the hard way that some people will do anything to feel powerful, even steal life-saving equipment during a crisis. The whole nightmare started on a bitterly cold February evening in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, when the power grid failed across half the county. I was sitting in my living room when everything went dark at exactly 6:37 p.m., the digital clock on my microwave blinking out mid-count. The temperature outside was already hovering at -8 degrees, and forecasters were predicting it would drop to -20 by morning. Without heat, my house would become uninhabitable within hours. My name is William Martinez, and I had been living in the Riverside Meadows subdivision for 3 years. It was one of those cookie-cutter developments with strict HOA rules about everything from mailbox colors to the exact height your grass could reach before you received a violation notice. The president of our HOA was a woman named Patricia Hendricks, a 52-year-old real estate agent with blonde highlights, unnaturally white teeth, and an attitude that made everyone in the neighborhood either fear her or avoid her completely. Within minutes of the blackout, I was in my garage pulling out the generator I had purchased the previous winter. It was a Champion 7500-watt portable generator, the kind that could run my furnace, refrigerator, and a few lights without any problem. I had spent nearly $1,000 on it specifically for emergencies like this. The machine was bright yellow with black handles, and I had engraved my initials into the metal frame with my electric engraver just to mark it as mine. I wheeled it out to my back patio, filled it with gasoline, and got it running within 20 minutes. The familiar rumble of the engine was reassuring as warm air started flowing through my vents again. My wife, Clara Norton, who I had married 8 months earlier, wrapped herself in a blanket and stood by the heating vent in our bedroom. She worked as a nurse at Mercy Medical Center and had just gotten home from a 12-hour shift. "Thank God you bought that generator," she said, her voice still shaky from the cold. "My phone says the power company estimates at least 8 hours before restoration." "Could be longer in this weather," I replied, checking the fuel gauge. "I have enough gas to run it through the night and most of tomorrow if we are careful." Around 7 p.m., I heard a sharp knock on my front door. When I opened it, Patricia Hendricks stood on my porch in a designer winter coat and fur-lined boots, her breath creating clouds in the frozen air. "William," she said, not bothering with pleasantries, "I need to talk to you about your generator." "What about it?" "It is violating HOA noise ordinances." Section 12, subsection 4 clearly states that no resident shall operate machinery that produces sound levels exceeding 65 decibels between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. I stared at her in disbelief. "Patricia, there is a power outage. People need heat." "It is -8 degrees outside. The rules don't have exceptions for weather," she said, crossing her arms. "I have already received 3 complaints from neighbors about the noise. 3 complaints. The power has been out for less than 30 minutes. Who could possibly be complaining already?" She ignored my question. "I am issuing you a formal violation notice. You need to shut down the generator immediately or face fines of $200 per day until compliance." Clara appeared behind me, still wrapped in her blanket. "You cannot be serious. We will freeze without heat." Patricia gave her a condescending smile. "There are alternative solutions. You could go to a hotel or perhaps invest in some extra blankets." The HOA rules exist to maintain quality of life for all residents, not just those who choose to ignore them. "This is insane," I said. "I am not shutting down my generator. Fine me if you want, but my family's safety comes first." Her expression hardened. "You are making a very poor decision, William. This will be documented and brought before the HOA board. We have the authority to place liens on properties for continued violations." She turned and walked back to her own house 3 doors down, her boots crunching on the frozen sidewalk. I closed the door and looked at Clara, who seemed as stunned as I felt. "She cannot actually force us to turn it off, can she?" Clara asked. "Not legally, no. Emergency safety supersedes HOA rules. I looked into this stuff when I bought the generator. She is just trying to flex her authority." But I should have known Patricia Hendricks never let anything go. I went to bed around 11 p.m., leaving the generator running on the back patio. The power was still out across the neighborhood, and through my bedroom window I could see dozens of houses sitting dark and cold. A few other residents had generators too, and I could hear the distant hum of engines scattered throughout the subdivision. Clara fell asleep quickly, exhausted from her long shift, but I lay awake for a while thinking about Patricia's threats. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke up suddenly. The house was silent except for Clara's soft breathing beside me. Too silent. I did not hear the generator running anymore. I climbed out of bed and checked the thermostat. The temperature inside had already dropped to 58 degrees. The furnace was not running. I grabbed my winter coat and boots and rushed outside through the back door. The generator was gone. I stood on my patio in the freezing darkness, staring at the empty spot where my $1,000 machine had been sitting just hours ago. The extension cords I had running into the house through a slightly open window were cut cleanly, the ends lying on the concrete like dead snakes. Fresh tire tracks marked the thin layer of snow in my backyard, leading from my patio around the side of my house to the street. "You have got to be kidding me," I muttered, my breath fogging in the Arctic air. I ran back inside and grabbed my phone, immediately calling the Cedar Rapids Police Department non-emergency line. The dispatcher told me that due to the power outage, they were receiving hundreds of calls and could not send an officer immediately, but they would send someone as soon as possible. She took my report over the phone and gave me a case number. Next, I went out front and checked my security camera. I had installed a Ring doorbell system 6 months ago, and it had battery backup that should have kept it running even without power. I pulled up the app on my phone and scrolled back through the footage. At 2:14 a.m., the camera had captured everything. A silver Mercedes SUV had pulled up in front of my house. Patricia Hendricks had gotten out, walked around to my backyard, and returned 10 minutes later wheeling my generator. She had loaded it into the back of her vehicle with surprising efficiency for someone her age, then driven away. The video was crystal clear, showing her face directly under my porch light as she glanced around to see if anyone was watching. "That crazy woman actually stole my generator," I said aloud, feeling a mixture of rage and disbelief. Clara had woken up by then, shivering in the cold house. "What happened?" Patricia took it. "I have video proof." I tried calling Patricia's cell phone, which was listed in the HOA directory. It rang 6 times before going to voicemail. I left a message that was far more polite than she deserved, asking her to return my property immediately. Then I called the police again, this time explaining that I knew who had taken the generator and had video evidence. The dispatcher seemed more interested now and said she would make sure an officer was sent to my address as a priority. "It might still be an hour or two," she warned. "We are extremely backed up tonight." Clara and I spent the next hour piling every blanket we owned onto our bed and huddling together for warmth. The temperature inside the house continued to drop, reaching 49 degrees by the time we heard a knock on the door at 4:30 a.m. I opened it to find 2 police officers standing on my porch. The older one, a man in his 40s with gray at his temples, introduced himself as Officer Derek Paulson. The younger one, a woman who looked barely out of the academy, was Officer Michelle Tran. You reported a stolen generator. Officer Paulson asked. Yes, and I know exactly who took it. I have video evidence. I showed them the Ring doorbell footage on my phone. Both officers watched carefully, their faces illuminated by the screen's glow. Officer Tran took notes while Officer Paulson asked me questions about the generator's value, identifying features, and my relationship with Patricia Hendricks. So, she is your HOA president, and she came by earlier in the evening threatening you about noise violations. Officer Paulson repeated, making sure he understood correctly. Exactly. She told me to shut it down, and when I refused, she apparently decided to take matters into her own hands. And these are your initials engraved on the frame. He pointed at the part of the video where the generator was visible. Yes, WM, William Martinez. I can show you the receipt from when I bought it at Home Depot last year. Officer Paulson exchanged a look with Officer Tran. This is pretty straightforward theft. We will go talk to Miss Hendricks right now. Can I come with you? I asked. Better if you stay here. We will come back and update you. I watched from my front window as the two officers walked down the street toward Patricia's house. Her home was one of the largest in the subdivision, a 2-story colonial with decorative shutters and a 3-car garage. Lights were on inside, probably from her own generator. I thought bitterly. Clara stood beside me, both of us watching like we were witnessing some crucial sporting event. What do you think will happen? I don't know. I just want my generator back so we do not freeze to death. The officers knocked on Patricia's door. It took almost 5 minutes before she answered. Even from 3 houses away, I could see her animated gestures as she talked to the officers. The conversation went on for nearly 20 minutes. At one point, Officer Paulson made a gesture toward the street, and Patricia shook her head vigorously. Finally, the officers returned to my house. Miss Hendricks denies taking your generator, Officer Paulson said. She claims she was asleep all night and that your video must be mistaken or doctored. That is ridiculous. You saw the video. It is clearly her face, her vehicle, my generator. I agree the video appears authentic, but she is refusing to let us search her property without a warrant. She said she is within her rights to deny a search. So what happens now? We will file a theft report and forward everything to the detective division. They can pursue a search warrant with a judge based on your video evidence. But that won't happen until normal business hours at the earliest. I felt my frustration boiling over. So she just gets to keep my generator while my wife and I freeze. The power is not expected back until this afternoon at the earliest. We could be dead by the time any detective gets a warrant. Officer Tran spoke up. I understand your frustration, Mr. Martinez. If it helps, we will stay in the area and keep an eye on the situation. If we see her trying to move or dispose of the generator, we will have probable cause to stop her. It was not the resolution I wanted, but it was better than nothing. The officers left, and Clara and I returned to our pile of blankets. The house was now 43 degrees inside. Our water pipes were at risk of freezing. I was genuinely worried about permanent damage to our home if the cold continued much longer. At 6 a.m., I tried calling Patricia again. Still no answer. I called the police station and asked for an update. They told me the detective division would not start their shift until 8 a.m. Clara had to leave for her shift at the hospital at 6:30. I feel terrible leaving you here in this freezing house, she said. You need to go. People need you at the hospital. I will deal with this. After she left, I sat in my living room wearing 3 layers of clothes and a winter coat, trying to stay warm. The sun was starting to rise, casting weak gray light through my windows. I could see neighbors emerging from their houses, some scraping ice off their cars, others walking down the street to check if anyone had power yet. At 7:15 a.m., I saw Patricia leave her house in her Mercedes SUV. She was dressed in business attire, carrying a briefcase, clearly heading to work like it was a normal day. The audacity of it made my blood boil. I immediately called Officer Paulson's direct number, which he had given me. She is leaving her house right now. She is in her Mercedes driving south on Riverside Drive. I will radio the nearest patrol unit, he said. They might be able to conduct a traffic stop if they can find a valid reason. 20 minutes later, Officer Paulson called me back. We pulled her over for a broken taillight. Gave the officers an excuse to talk to her. She got extremely defensive and threatened to sue the department for harassment. She knows she is being watched. Did they see the generator in her car? No, but the back of the SUV was covered with a tarp. They could not see what was under it without cause to search. The video is cause. The detective will handle it. These things take time. I know it is frustrating. At 8:30 a.m., Detective Robert Chen called me. He had reviewed my case file and the video evidence. His voice was professional but sympathetic. Mr. Martinez, I have submitted a request for a search warrant to Judge Morrison. Based on the video evidence you provided, I am confident it will be approved. However, the judge is dealing with several emergency matters related to the power outage, so it might take a few hours. Detective Chen, with all due respect, I need that generator back now. My house is freezing. If our pipes burst, it will cost thousands in repairs. I understand completely. I will make this a priority. In the meantime, I strongly suggest you find somewhere warm to wait. Do you have family or friends you could stay with? That is not the point. Why should I have to leave my home because someone stole my property? You are absolutely right. But your safety is more important than proving a point. He was right, of course. I called Clara at the hospital and told her I was going to wait at her mother's house across town until this was resolved. But as I was packing a bag, something stopped me. The principle of the situation. If I left, Patricia won. She would have successfully forced me out of my home through theft and intimidation. Instead, I got in my truck and drove to Home Depot. I bought another generator, this one a smaller model but enough to keep my furnace running. I also bought a heavy chain and padlock. When I got home, I set up the new generator on my front porch where I could see it from my living room window, then chained it to my porch railing with the industrial-strength lock. Let her try to take this one, I thought. The new generator roared to life, and warm air started flowing through my house again. The temperature was 38 degrees inside by then. I stood by the heating vent like it was a campfire, grateful for the warmth but furious about having to spend another $600. At 11:45 a.m., Detective Chen called again. Good news. The warrant was approved. I am heading to Miss Hendricks's residence now with 2 uniformed officers. Can I be there? I would prefer you stay away. This needs to be handled professionally. I will call you as soon as we locate your property. I watched from my window as 3 police vehicles pulled up in front of Patricia's house. Detective Chen, Officer Paulson, Officer Tran, and 3 other officers I did not recognize approached the door. Patricia's car was not in the driveway. She was apparently still at work. The officers knocked repeatedly. No answer. Detective Chen made a phone call, presumably to Patricia. Several minutes passed. Finally, one of the officers went around to the back of the house. My phone rang. It was Detective Chen. Mr. Martinez, we have a situation. I need you to tell me again exactly what your generator looks like. I described it in detail again, emphasizing the yellow Champion brand, the model number, and my engraved initials. And you are certain it is yours. There is no possibility of confusion. I am 100% certain. I have the serial number written down if you need it. Please text that to me immediately. I sent him a photo of my purchase receipt showing the serial number. Then I waited, watching the officers moving around Patricia's property. After about 20 minutes, they emerged from the backyard wheeling my generator. Even from a distance, I could see the distinctive yellow color. Detective Chen called me back. We found it in her detached garage. The serial number matches your receipt. We are seizing it as evidence. Evidence. Can I have it back? I need it. I understand, but it is evidence in a theft case now. However, given the emergency circumstances, I will see if we can release it to you quickly with proper documentation. Come down to the station in about an hour. I drove to the Cedar Rapids Police Department Central Station at 1:30 p.m. Detective Chen met me in the lobby with paperwork to sign. My generator sat on a dolly in the evidence room, looking exactly as I had left it except for some new scratches on the side. You can take it with you today, Detective Chen said. We have photographed it thoroughly and documented everything. Your video evidence is really all we need for prosecution. What happens to Patricia now? She will be charged with theft in the 3rd degree, which is an aggravated misdemeanor in Iowa since the property value exceeds $500. We will also be looking at possible charges for criminal mischief due to the cut extension cords. She is being contacted right now to come in for questioning. Will she go to jail? That depends on several factors. Her criminal history, how she responds to questioning, what the prosecutor decides. She will definitely face legal consequences. I loaded my generator back into my truck, feeling a sense of vindication, but also exhaustion from the whole ordeal. When I got home, I returned the second generator to Home Depot, explaining the situation to the customer service representative who processed my refund with wide eyes and sympathetic nods. The power came back on at 3:47 p.m. The crisis was over, but the legal drama was just beginning. Over the next few days, news of Patricia's arrest spread through the neighborhood faster than any HOA newsletter ever could. I learned from my neighbor, Todd, who lived next door, that Patricia had actually gone to the police station for questioning and had completely broken down when confronted with the video evidence and the fact that they had found the generator in her garage. I heard she just started crying and admitted everything, Todd said as we stood in our driveways talking. Said she was trying to teach you a lesson about following HOA rules. A lesson. She stole my property during a life-threatening power outage. Yeah, everyone thinks she has lost her mind. There is already talk about removing her as HOA president. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. I had to take time off work to attend, which annoyed me since I had already lost enough time and money dealing with Patricia's insanity. The hearing was held at the Lynn County Courthouse, an imposing building in downtown Cedar Rapids. I sat in the gallery watching as Patricia entered with her attorney, an expensive-looking man in a tailored suit. She looked smaller somehow, less intimidating without her usual aggressive confidence. Her husband, a quiet accountant named Gerald whom I had only met a few times, sat in the front row looking miserable. The prosecutor, Assistant County Attorney Jennifer Walsh, presented the case efficiently. She showed the Ring doorbell video to the judge, submitted my receipt and photos of the engraved initials, and called Detective Chen to testify about finding the generator in Patricia's garage. Patricia's attorney tried to argue that it was a misunderstanding, that Patricia had believed she was exercising her authority as HOA president to temporarily confiscate property that was violating subdivision rules. Judge Morrison, a stern woman in her 60s, did not look impressed by this argument. "Counsel, are you seriously suggesting that a homeowners association president has the legal authority to enter private property and seize personal belongings?" Judge Morrison asked. "Your Honor, my client was acting in what she believed was the best interest of the community. Her judgment may have been flawed, but there was no criminal intent. The video evidence shows her committing theft in the middle of the night." The state of Iowa does not recognize HOA authority as a defense against property crimes. Patricia pleaded not guilty, and the case was scheduled for trial in 2 months. As we left the courthouse, Patricia's attorney approached me in the hallway. "Mr. Martinez, my client would like to discuss a possible resolution to avoid a trial." "I am listening." "She is willing to formally apologize, pay for any damages or expenses you incurred, and resign from the HOA board. In exchange, we would ask that you support a reduction in charges or possibly a deferred judgment." I thought about it. Part of me wanted to see her face full consequences, but another part just wanted this to be over. "I will consider it, but I want a written apology acknowledging exactly what she did and why it was wrong. And she needs to pay for the second generator I had to buy, all the gas I used, my time off work, and a buffer for the risk she put my home in. I estimate that at $3,000 total." The attorney winced at the number but nodded. "I will discuss it with my client." A week later, I received a formal letter from Patricia's attorney. Enclosed was a personal letter from Patricia herself, handwritten on expensive stationery. The letter was 2 pages long and, to her credit, did not try to minimize what she had done. She wrote about how the stress of being HOA president had gotten to her, how she had become obsessed with enforcing rules to the point of losing perspective on what actually mattered. She acknowledged that she had put my safety at risk, violated my trust, and broken the law. She took full responsibility and expressed genuine remorse. "I understand if you cannot forgive me," she wrote, "but I hope you can believe that I am truly sorry and that I am getting help to understand why I let power and control become more important than being a decent neighbor and human being." Along with the letter was a cashier's check for $3,000. I showed everything to Clara that evening. She read the letter carefully, then looked at me. "What do you want to do?" she asked. I think she means it, and honestly, I am tired of this consuming my life. If she resigns from the HOA and gets charged with something that goes on her record, that feels like enough. You are more forgiving than I would be. Maybe, or maybe I just want to move on. I contacted the prosecutor and explained that I would support a plea agreement. Jennifer Walsh told me that she had been planning to offer Patricia a deferred judgment anyway since it was a first offense, but my support would make the process smoother. The final plea hearing was held 6 weeks after the initial incident. Patricia pleaded guilty to theft in the 3rd degree. Judge Morrison sentenced her to a deferred judgment with 2 years of probation, 100 hours of community service, mandatory counseling, and restitution in the amount I had already received. If she completed everything successfully and stayed out of trouble, the charge would be removed from her record. "Miss Hendricks," Judge Morrison said sternly, "you held a position of trust in your community, and you abused that trust in an unconscionable way. You placed your neighbor's safety at risk to satisfy your own need for control. I am giving you an opportunity to move forward without a permanent criminal record, but make no mistake, this behavior was serious and unacceptable. If you appear before me again on any charge, you will face the full consequences." "I understand, Your Honor," Patricia said quietly. "Thank you." She resigned from the HOA board the next day. An emergency election was held, and a retired teacher named Frank Zimmerman was chosen as the new president. His first act was to revise the HOA rules to include explicit exceptions for emergency situations. Life in Riverside Meadows slowly returned to normal. Patricia and Gerald kept to themselves. I would occasionally see her in her yard or at the grocery store, and we would exchange awkward but polite nods. She was doing her community service hours at a homeless shelter, I learned from Todd. The counseling seemed to be helping her gain perspective. Clara and I settled into a comfortable routine. The generator sat in our garage, ready for the next emergency but hopefully never needed. I had installed a better security camera system and added motion sensor lights to our backyard, just in case. Spring arrived, melting the snow and bringing green back to Iowa. I was in my front yard planting flowers one Saturday morning in late April when Patricia approached me. She walked slowly, hesitantly, like someone approaching a wild animal. "William, do you have a minute?" she asked. "Sure. I just wanted to thank you for not pushing for harsher charges. My attorney told me you could have made things much worse for me. You are welcome. How are you doing?" "Better. The counseling has been eye-opening. I did not realize how much I had let the HOA role define me. When you challenged my authority, I felt like you were attacking my identity. That is no excuse for what I did, but it helps me understand it. I appreciate you saying that. I am moving," she said suddenly. "Gerald and I talked about it, and we think a fresh start would be good. Too many people here know what happened. It is hard to face everyone." "I understand. Where are you going?" "Des Moines. Gerald got a job opportunity there. We close on a house next month." "I hope it goes well for you," she smiled sadly. "Me too, and William, I really am sorry. I know I have said it before, but I mean it. You could have frozen because of me. Your wife could have been hurt. I let something as stupid as neighborhood rules become more important than human decency. I will regret that for the rest of my life. I believe you, and I forgive you." Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. That means more than you know." She walked back to her house, and I returned to my flowers. Clara came out with 2 glasses of lemonade and sat on the porch steps watching me work. "That looked like an intense conversation," she said. "She is moving." Wanted to apologize again. "How do you feel about that?" "Honestly, relieved. It will be easier for everyone if she is not living 3 doors down. You are a good person, William Martinez. A lot of people would have wanted revenge. What is the point?" She's going to spend the next 2 years on probation, doing community service, and dealing with the consequences of her choices. That seems like enough punishment. Clara smiled and handed me a glass of lemonade. "Well, at least we got a good story out of it. Though I would prefer our next adventure to be less freeze your ass off and more tropical vacation." "Deal." Patricia and Gerald moved out 3 weeks later. I watched the moving truck load up their furniture and belongings. Several neighbors came out to say goodbye, offering polite wishes for their fresh start. Whatever else Patricia had done, she had lived here for 8 years and had been part of the community, even if her final chapter had been disastrous. The new HOA board under Frank Zimmerman's leadership turned out to be remarkably reasonable. They simplified the rules, eliminated several ridiculous restrictions Patricia had implemented over the years, and actually focused on maintaining property values and community spirit rather than petty enforcement. At the first board meeting I attended in May, Frank addressed the previous incident directly. "What happened with Patricia was a wake-up call for all of us," he said to the assembled homeowners. "We forgot that we are neighbors first and an association second. Rules exist to help our community, not to give anyone power over anyone else. Going forward, we will approach every situation with common sense and compassion." There was genuine applause around the room. People were ready for a change. Summer arrived, hot and humid as Iowa summers always are. My generator sat unused in the garage, which was exactly how I preferred it. Clara and I hosted a neighborhood barbecue in July, inviting everyone on our street. Todd brought his famous potato salad. Frank brought burgers to grill. Even Gerald's elderly mother, who had moved into their house after they left, came with a homemade apple pie. As I stood in my backyard watching neighbors laugh and eat and enjoy themselves, I realized how much had changed in just a few months. The tension that had defined Riverside Meadows under Patricia's leadership had evaporated. People seemed happier, more relaxed, more willing to actually talk to each other instead of worrying about violation notices. "This is nice," Clara said, sliding her arm around my waist. "Remember when you wanted to move after the generator thing?" I was angry. "But you were right that we should not let one person chase us away from our home. And now look, Patricia is gone, the HOA is functional, and we have actual friends in the neighborhood." She was right. Todd and his wife had become regular dinner companions. Frank and his husband invited us to their book club. The young couple who had moved into Patricia's old house, Nathan and Deanna, were friendly and normal. Life was good. In September, I received a letter from the Lynn County Attorney's Office. Patricia had completed all her community service hours and had attended every required counseling session. Her probation officer reported excellent compliance. The prosecutor was recommending early termination of her probation and dismissal of the charge. "They are asking if I have any objection," I told Clara, showing her the letter. "Do you?" "No. She has done everything she was supposed to do. She moved away and started over. What more could I want?" I wrote back to the prosecutor stating I had no objection. A month later, I received notification that Patricia's deferred judgment had been successfully completed and the charge had been dismissed from her record. I hoped she was doing well in Des Moines. I hoped she had learned from the experience. I hoped she never again let authority and rules become more important than basic human decency. As for me, I had learned my own lessons. I learned that standing up for yourself is important, but so is knowing when to show mercy. I learned that communities can heal if people are willing to move forward. I learned that sometimes the worst situations can lead to positive changes if you let them. The generator remained in my garage, a yellow reminder of that cold February night. Every time I saw it, I remembered both the crisis and the resolution. I kept it maintained and ready, checking the oil and running it monthly to make sure it would work if needed again. But more than anything, I looked at that generator and felt grateful. Grateful that I had it when I needed it. Grateful that the legal system worked. Grateful that Patricia had found the courage to change. Grateful that Clara had stood by me through the stress and anger. Grateful for the community we had built in Riverside Meadows after the chaos had settled. Winter came around again, as it always does in Iowa. The first major snowstorm hit in early December, dumping 14 inches on Cedar Rapids overnight. I went out early the next morning to clear my driveway and found Todd already working on his. We helped each other, then moved on to help Deanna and Nathan with theirs. "This is what neighbors do," Frank said, joining us with his own snowblower. "We help each other. That is what Patricia never understood." He was right. Community was not about rules and violations and power. It was about showing up when someone needed help. It was about generators during power outages and snow blowers after storms and barbecues on summer evenings. As I finished clearing the last section of sidewalk, I looked up and down our street. Every house was decorated for Christmas. Smoke rose from chimneys. Children played in the snow. It looked like something from a holiday card, almost too perfect to be real. But it was real. This was my neighborhood, my community, my home. And despite everything that had happened, or maybe because of it, I would not want to be anywhere else. Clara called me in for hot chocolate. I put away the snow shovel and headed inside, stomping the snow off my boots. The generator sat in the corner of the garage, silent and ready. I gave it a quick pat as I walked past, a small gesture of appreciation for the role it had played in changing our community for the better. Sometimes the worst nights lead to the brightest mornings. Sometimes theft and crisis reveal character and create opportunity for growth. Sometimes a stolen generator during a power outage becomes the catalyst for transformation. I learned that cold February night that some people will do anything to feel powerful. But I also learned that power means nothing compared to integrity, community, and the courage to do the right thing even when it is hard. Patricia Hendricks stole my generator during a power outage, then froze when police tracked it to her garage. But the real story was not about theft or arrest or legal proceedings. The real story was about what happened after, about how people and communities can change, heal, and become stronger on the other side of crisis. And that was a story worth living through, even with all its cold and uncomfortable moments. Years from now, when someone asks me about living in Riverside Meadows, I will tell them about the HOA president who stole my generator. But I will also tell them about Frank Zimmerman's leadership, about Todd's friendship, about summer barbecues and winter snow removal, and a community that learned to be better. I will tell them about how sometimes the worst neighbors teach us the most important lessons, even if those lessons come with a side of grand theft and hypothermia risk. But mostly, I will tell them it was worth it. The cold night, the stolen generator, the legal drama, all of it. Because on the other side was something better than I could have imagined, a real community, real neighbors, a real home, and that was worth more than any generator, no matter how expensive or reliable. The power stayed on that winter. The generator stayed in the garage. And life in Riverside Meadows continued, peaceful and normal and exactly as it should be. Sometimes that is the best ending you can ask for, just normal life with good people in a place you are proud to call home.